In the aftermath of the First World War, Germany was a nation silenced, its wings clipped by the Treaty of Versailles. But in the quiet suburbs of Bonn, two brothers, Walter and Reimar Horten, were looking at the sky not with defeat, but with a radical obsession. While other children played with soldiers, the Hortens were obsessed with the aerodynamics of birds, convinced that the tail of an airplane was a parasite, a useless weight that hindered true flight. They spent their youth building gliders in their parents' home, pushing the boundaries of physics in a world that forbade them from flying. Their dream was simple, yet terrifying, a pure wing that could glide through the air like a ghost. As they stood on the hills testing their wooden creations, they realized that to touch the future, they first had to erase the tail. But the path to innovation is often paved with wreckage. In the mid-1930s, the Horten brothers moved from gliders to powered flight, but their flying wing designs were notoriously unstable. During one secret test flight, the aircraft began to wobble violently, nearly disintegrating in midair. Reimar watched in horror as the prototype plunged towards the earth, nearly claiming his brother's life in a rain of splintered wood and twisted metal. It was a brutal reminder that nature does not forgive those who defy its rules. Yet, the Hortens refused to stop. They analyzed the crash with a cold, surgical precision that bordered on the fanatical. As the smoke cleared, it wasn't fear they felt. It was a dark invitation from the Luftwaffe. By 1943, the Third Reich was bleeding, and Hermann Göring was desperate for a miracle weapon that could turn the tide of the war. He summoned the brothers and issued a challenge that sounded like science fiction: create a bomber that could carry 1,000 kilograms of explosives at 1,000 kilometers per hour for a distance of 1,000 kilometers. It was known as the 3 times 1,000 requirement, and most engineers thought it was impossible. But for the Hortens, it was the chance they had waited for their entire lives. They promised Göring the impossible, knowing that the war machine would now give them unlimited resources. The brothers had their mission, but they were about to build it out of something far more ancient and unexpected than steel. Because aluminum was prioritized for fighter jets, the Horten Ho 229 had to be constructed primarily from plywood. To hold the massive wing together, they developed a specialized glue mixed with charcoal and carbon, a mixture born of necessity, not design. However, as they tested the material, they stumbled upon a chilling anomaly. The carbon in the glue didn't just strengthen the wood, it absorbed electromagnetic waves. Without intending to, the Hortens had created the world's first stealth coating. They were building a weapon that wouldn't just fly fast, it would fly unseen, a predator lurking in the shadows of the radar. They had created a ghost, and soon, the factory workers would be the first to witness its haunting presence. In the dim light of the Gotha factory, the completed V1 prototype looked less like an airplane and more like an alien artifact. It had no fuselage, no tail, just a smooth, predatory curve of dark wood and metal. Workers reported a strange sensation when standing near it, a feeling of being watched by something that shouldn't exist. When the radar crews attempted to calibrate their equipment near the hangar, they were met with a terrifying silence. The plane simply wasn't there on their screens. The Horten brothers had successfully summoned a demon of the skies, but the war was ending faster than they could unleash it. As the hangar doors creaked open for its first reveal, no one knew they were looking at the ancestor of the modern stealth bomber. The HO-229 was designed for a world that hadn't yet learned how to handle extreme speed. At a time when the fastest Allied planes were struggling To reach 700 kilometers per hour, the Horten brothers were aiming for 1,000, but speed came with a heavy price. The twin Jumo 004 jet engines consumed fuel at a terrifying rate, and Germany's oil reserves were almost gone. Every flight was a desperate gamble against empty tanks and the laws of physics. They were chasing the sound of the future, but the engines that powered it were more dangerous than the enemies they were meant to fight. However, the most chilling feature of the Ho 229 wasn't its speed, but its invisibility. For decades, historians debated, did the Hortens intentionally create a stealth aircraft? Or was it a lucky accident of its wooden construction and carbon glue? Modern forensic engineering has finally given us the answer. By removing the tail and smoothing the surface, they had drastically reduced the plane's radar cross-section. Whether by design or by divine coincidence, the Ho 229 had become a phantom that the world's most advanced defense systems simply could not see. But to remain a ghost, the plane had to survive its own heart. The Jumo 004 turbojets were the pinnacle of Nazi engineering, yet they were notoriously temperamental, with a lifespan of only 25 hours before they risked total failure. The intense heat generated by these engines often charred the wooden frame of the wing, turning the aircraft into a flying tinderbox. Pilots were essentially sitting on a controlled explosion, knowing that at any second, a single metal fatigue could turn their cockpit into a furnace. In the cockpit of the Horten, a pilot wasn't just flying a plane, he was sitting atop a volcano that was destined to erupt. Despite these dangers, the technical superiority of the wooden wonder over Allied iron giants was undeniable. While the American Mustangs and British Spitfires relied on heavy steel armor and massive piston engines, the Ho 229 used its lack of drag to outmaneuver anything in the sky. It could climb faster, turn tighter, and disappear before the Allied pilots could even lock their sights. It was a battle between two different eras of warfare: the aging giants of the past versus a sleek, silent predator from the future. Against the steel and roar of the Allied Air Force, the wooden wing was a whisper that could outrun the wind itself. That whisper finally screamed in February 1945 during the first successful flight of the V-2 prototype. Test pilot Erwin Ziller took the craft into the clouds, proving that the flying wing was not just a theory, but a terrifying reality. For a few glorious moments, the Horten brothers believed they had won. But on the third landing attempt, disaster struck. The left engine failed, filling the cockpit with toxic smoke. Ziller struggled to save the masterpiece, but the volcano finally erupted, and the plane crashed in a ball of fire, taking the pilot's life with it. The dream had finally taken flight, but like Icarus, the Horten had flown too close to the sun, leaving behind a trail of fire and a mystery that would remain buried for decades. But in this darker timeline, the fire didn't end the project, it fueled it. By January 1945, a secret squadron of Ho 229s was ready for a mission that seemed impossible: an undetected strike on the British radar network. As the flying wings crossed the English Channel at 30,000 feet, the operators at Chain Home saw nothing but empty air on their phosphorescent screens. The silent Blitz had begun. Suddenly, the defensive wall of Britain was no longer a shield, but a spectator to its own destruction. Minutes later, the heart of London was shaken by explosions that seemed to fall from a clear, empty sky. There were no air raid sirens, no searchlights locking onto targets, and no roar of heavy bombers, only the terrifying, high-pitched scream of jet engines fading into the distance. The public was paralyzed newspapers began reporting on ghost bombers that could strike with total impunity. For the people of London, the terror wasn't just in the explosion, but in the invisibility of the attacker. Seeing the success of these ghost raids, Berlin launched Operation Cerberus II, a desperate but brilliant strategy to secure the air corridors over Europe. Squadrons of HO-229s were deployed to intercept Allied supply lines, moving with a speed that made the legendary Mustang escort planes look like they were standing still. The Allies found themselves blinded and outpaced, their logistical lifeline slowly being strangled by an enemy they couldn't find on a map. The skies over Europe were being reclaimed by a force that moved like a shadow and struck like a lightning bolt Allied pilots, once the masters of the air began returning to base with harrowing stories of silver, triangular crafts that outturned and outclimbed them with supernatural ease. They described these encounters as meeting piring turbang, or flying saucers, objects that defied the known laws of aviation. The hunter had officially become the hunted, as the Allied Air Force struggled to maintain morale against a weapon they started to believe was alien in origin. These sightings became the first whispers of a myth that would haunt the world for decades, the legend of the Foo Fighters. But the truth was far more terrestrial, hidden deep beneath the earth in the salt mines of Thuringia. As Allied bombers pulverized German cities above, an underground fortress of industry worked around the clock in total silence, safe from the rain of fire. Here, hundreds of HO-229 fuselages were being assembled in the dark, protected by hundreds of feet of solid rock. It was a factory of phantoms, an industrial heart that kept beating long after the world thought Germany had been defeated. The war wasn't ending. It was simply moving into a realm where the sun never shone. In the spring of 1945, as the Allied forces squeezed the Third Reich from both sides, the battlefield shifted from soldiers to secrets. Both the United States and the Soviet Union knew that German laboratories held technology years ahead of their own, and the absolute prize was the Horten flying wing. Operation Lusty, a specialized American intelligence team, was dispatched with one directive: find the Gotha factory before the Red Army does. They were in a desperate race against time and an advancing Soviet war machine that was equally ruthless in its hunger for advanced weaponry. The Allies were not just fighting to end a war, they were racing to claim its most terrifying prize. In April 1945, American troops finally breached the Gotha aircraft plant in Friedrichsroda, and what they found inside left seasoned soldiers in absolute awe. Sitting in the middle of the factory was the Horten Ho 229 V3 prototype, nearly completed and looking impossibly futuristic against the backdrop of war-torn Germany. It was a massive, smooth, wing-shaped phantom that looked like it belonged in a science fiction novel, not a 1940s assembly line. The Americans immediately secured the facility, realizing they had just captured the holy grail of aviation. But as the Americans stood before the physical proof of a technological leap, the minds behind it were nowhere to be found. Walter and Reimar Horten knew exactly what would happen when Germany fell, and they had no intention of being captured by the Soviets. In the final chaotic days of the war, the brothers executed a calculated disappearance, destroying thousands of classified documents and slipping away into the civilian population. Rumors swirled about their whereabouts. Some believed they were hiding in secret bunkers, while others feared they had already defected to the east. the hunt for the brothers became a game of shadows, with intelligence officers scouring the ruins of the Reich for any trace of the brilliant minds that defied the tale. The brothers had vanished into the chaos of a falling Reich, leaving their creations to be split among the victors. Recognizing the immense strategic value of the Ho 229, the Americans initiated a covert operation to extract the captured prototype and its creators' remaining blueprints. Under the umbrella of Operation Paperclip, the incomplete V3 prototype was carefully disassembled, crated, and shipped across the Atlantic to the United States. It was a heist of the highest order, transferring Germany's most advanced aerodynamic secrets directly into the hands of American scientists. The wing arrived in the US in pieces, a physical puzzle of a future war that American engineers were desperate to understand. The wing had been successfully harvested, but it was not the only superpower looking to replicate its dark magic. In Moscow, Joseph Stalin was furious that the Americans had captured the prize of Gotha, and he demanded that Soviet engineers create their own version of the Horten wing. Using captured secondary documents and the remnants of the Horten's earlier glider research, Soviet designers attempted to reverse engineer the pure wing concept, but they faced a massive obstacle. They lacked the advanced jet engines, the precise mathematical data, and the unique chemical composition of the carbon glue. Every attempt to build a Soviet flying wing resulted in unstable, uncontrollable aircraft that proved to be a death sentence for test pilots. Stalin's dream of a Soviet flying wing would slowly turn to dust, but across the ocean, the seed of the Horten design was quietly beginning to grow. In the decades following the war, American aerospace giant Jack Northrop became obsessed with the same flying wing concept that had driven the Horten brothers. While the US government initially struggled to stabilize these designs, the blueprints from Gotha provided a silent roadmap for the future. When the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber was finally unveiled in the 1980s, the resemblance was more than just a coincidence. It shared the same predatory silhouette, the same absence of a tail, and the same ghostly presence on radar. The Horten Ho 229 hadn't died in 1945. It had simply evolved into the most expensive and lethal aircraft in human history. Yet, while the B-2 flew over modern battlefields, the original ancestor, the Ho 229 V3, sat in a dark, neglected corner of a Smithsonian storage facility for over 60 years. Covered in dust and deteriorating, it was treated like an embarrassing secret rather than a historical treasure. Why was one of the most revolutionary designs in aviation history left to rot while other war prizes were displayed with pride? Some say the authorities were still studying its unique radar-absorbent properties in secret, while others believe its existence was too uncomfortable, a reminder of how close the enemy had come to a miracle. It was only recently that the ghost was finally brought into the light for restoration, revealing the charcoal and wood that nearly changed the world. But as the restoration began, so did the whispers of a darker connection. In the late 1940s, right as the US was testing captured flying wing technology, the first reports of unidentified flying objects began to emerge, most notably in Roswell, New Mexico. Witnesses described silver, triangular crafts moving at speeds that defied belief, descriptions that perfectly matched the profile of the Horten wing. Was the birth of modern UFO lore actually the result of secret American test flights using Nazi technology? The timeline fits perfectly, suggesting that the aliens people feared were actually the echoes of Walter and Raymar's obsession flying over the American desert in total secrecy. This realization has sparked a fierce debate among modern historians. Can we truly call stealth technology a German invention? While the US mastered the computer systems and materials needed for the F-117 and B-2, the fundamental physics, the removal of the vertical tail, and the use of radar-absorbent mixtures were undeniably birthed in the minds of the Horten brothers. It is a controversial legacy that forces us to acknowledge that the tools used to protect modern democracy were forged in the shadow of a dark regime. The Hortens gave us the shape of the future, but they did so while serving a master that wanted to destroy it. We are left with a haunting question that transcends engineering. We have seen the brilliance of two brothers, the desperation of a falling Reich, and the birth of a technology that still dominates our skies. But the final verdict remains. Can technology truly win a war if the morality of those who use it has already lost? The Ho 229 was a miracle of science, but it was built by a regime that had abandoned its soul. Perhaps the wing remained a ghost for so long because we weren't just afraid of its speed. We were afraid of what it represented. Thanks so much for watching Veteran History, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.